It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Frontline Friday with my very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Bridget, how are you?
Andy, I'm great.
That's great.
I'm great. Now I'm in my new location here in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we need, don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but you realize you just moved from Boston not that long ago, and now you're back again.
I know. I guess there's something magnetic here. I keep finding my way back.
You do?
It hasn't been intentional, but I keep finding my way back, and I'm super happy to be here.
Good. Yeah, there are way worse places you could be than being in Boston, for sure.
It's a little cold right now. I'm not used to spring where I need to wear big, huge parkas, and it's 20 degrees. But I'm embracing it. I'm embracing the change.
Well, you managed to avoid most of the winter, so yeah, spring's just around the corner. As I say that,
I think
it's going to snow 2 feet probably before spring comes.
Yeah, because where are you today? Where are you today?
I'm in beautiful Manhattan.
Okay, so you're sharing my weather.
Yeah, we definitely are. All right, so today we're going to talk about relationships.
Great.
You say with a panic in your voice.
Let's do it.
And we're not going to talk about your relationships. We could though, if you want to. But we're going to talk about relationships with buyers. Now, I heard somebody talk within the last couple of weeks, and a sales speaker, and they sort of went on a little bit of a rant about how the buyer doesn't want a relationship with the seller. And yeah, I guess it depends on your definition of a relationship. That could be true, but there is a relationship. You're connected with someone. There is a relationship. So I guess if your definition of a relationship means that you're friends with your buyer, then I would agree. They probably don't want that. But I thought it'd be really interesting to delve into today. What does it mean to have a relationship with the buyer?
I think that's a funny comment that the customers don't want relationships with the buyers. Part of it is they are in a relationship with the buyer, unless they're buying it. Over the internet, and they don't interact with anyone, and they're not going to, but other than that, there is a relationship there, whether you want it or not. It's just, what kind of relationship is it? It can be a very loose. I have relationships with people that I wouldn't say they're strong, but people I come in contact with. But I think you've interacted with somebody to make some sale or some transaction. And yeah, I agree with you. Maybe they don't want to be friends, but I guess it goes.
That's where people get confused. I think there's some people, you say, look, a relationship with a buyer or prospect is, some people immediately go to thinking, well, that means friendship. And I don't think that's what it means. So a dictionary definition of relationship, one of them is, and this is a quote, is a relationship is, quote, the way in which two or more concepts, object, or people are connected, or it's the state of being connected. So to me, that's right. Really at heart just what a relationship is there's a connection.
There's a connection. Level. That's right. There's a connection. Mm-hmm. And
that connection, like I said, doesn't have to mean like in school when we're kids. Well, I like somebody. I like Vicky. Well, do you like Vicky or do you like Vicky?
Right.
And it seems like some people sort of feel like it's that when they're talking about relationships with buyers. It's like, they have to like me, as opposed to just, we got to be connected. We got to be on the same wavelength or aligned.
Well, and think about, Andy, what makes a good relationship. And this is where I think a buyer or prospect does want a relationship with the seller. When I think about a good relationship, I think about trust. I think about transparency. I think about someone I can count on, who's dependable.
Mm-hmm. Lives up to their commitments.
Lives up to their commitments.
Has integrity.
Integrity. I enjoy interacting with. So I think about those relationships. I want that. If I'm a prospect and I'm in a buying cycle, I want those things. I want to know that there's trust and integrity and dependability, and I want that. That's very important to me. So I think you're right. I think there's some confusion around the term, and it's not sales to me. Like when people talk about, oh, I like relationship sales. I think some people do get confused that means we're buddy-buddy, we like being together, we're like they think about the very soft attributes of it, when I think it really is those more core fundamental things that are the ones that really build value in the relationship, and the relationships that are sustained are the ones that are based on some of these fundamentals, trust and integrity and dependability, that sort of thing.
And I think the relationship between a buyer and a seller, it's really a performance-based relationship.
Definitely.
And so buyers have a task that they're trying to achieve. They're trying to gather information to quickly gather information to be able to make good decisions about buying a product or service. And they need your help to be able to do that. So they have to be able to depend on you, but you have to perform. You have to perform. If you can't perform, then you don't have a relationship with that buyer.
Well, and I think in any relationship, there's a give and a take. And relationships are also based on expectations. There's a certain expectation I have of people that I'm in a relationship with and that they have of me. And it's the same. It's the same in a buyer-seller or prospect-seller, that there's certain expectations on both sides. And like you said, in this case, it's around performing a certain task or services or delivering something, but there are certain expectations that are required. Mm-hmm. And if those aren't met, the relationship will likely go sour. Yeah, it's hard to have a good relationship without those.
Yeah. Well, in the past, I've talked about relationships, or comparing it to the relationship I had with my golden retriever, who unfortunately, since I wrote the article, has passed away. But a golden retriever named Riley, a lovely, lovely dog, and I said, my relationship was that, I'd take him on a walk 3 times a day. I'd feed him 3 times a day. I'd get down on the ground and play with him and roughhouse with him a couple times a day. And I know that there was this, relationship we had, right? And that he loved me. But as soon as I left the door and went on a business trip, somebody else came in. They walked him 3 times a day. They fed him twice a day. They roughhoused with him. He was the object of their attention, or they were the object of his attentions and affections. And I think buyers are somewhat the same way. If you're not getting the job done for them, they might like you, but it's going to be, I don't have time for you, and we don't have a relationship. I'll go with the guy or the woman that's giving me what I need to get my job done.
Yeah, because it's based on these certain criteria. Our relationship is based on, in the case of you and Riley, you throwing the ball and giving treats and giving attention. And when you're not there, then Riley's attention went elsewhere. Yeah. Although Riley never forgot you.
Well, gosh, I hope not, right? But probably forgot me until I showed up at the door, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember you. I think buyers are probably not too different from that. If you're not performing, you're just not in mind with them.
That's right.
I sort of think about it. A term I sort of come up with over the years is that, and it's a little bit of an oxymoron, and sort of like jumbo shrimp, is that the buyers they should feel a positive neutrality about you.
God, I'd never thought of it that way. A positive neutrality.
Where it's not like it's not like they don't like you. And that's okay. That could be on the table. But by the same token is they can't not like you, because that's fatal. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt your chances if your prospects do like you, but it's not essential they do. I mean, it does hurt. Yeah, it does hurt if they dislike you, because then you're toast.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. It's this positive neutrality at a minimum. I remember when I was working for Xerox, and then also it was the same when I was working for this reseller for Hewlett Packard, that they would move around the enterprise reps every couple of years, give you new customers, new territories. And part of the reason was they wanted the customers to develop relationships with the company, not the person. Mm-hmm. And if they left the person in too long, sometimes the buyers would get confused. And they would go follow Bridget if Bridget went to a competitor, or Andy if Andy went to a competitor. And they wanted to change it up enough that they would have that relationship with the company and feel that same sense of loyalty and sort of that performance-based interaction, because the company was delivering on its promise. The company was dependable. The company was easy to deal with. The company was reliable. The company had integrity, as opposed to the individual. But it just shows you also the power of the relationship, and how, whether we want to or not, those opinions are being formed about whether this is somebody who I want to engage with. And if I feel positively neutral, or stronger, or not so strong, it's happening. Whether you want it to or not, it's happening.
Yeah, when we think about this positive neutrality, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a gentleman who's an author, a podcaster named Doug Sandler, who's got a podcast called The Nice Guys Business Podcast, I believe it's called. He's written a book called Nice Guys Finish First. And it's really an interesting take, as his belief is, based on his experiences, that really the key thing that attracts people to want to do business with you is being nice. And so you think about that in the context of a relationship. I mean, you can be nice to someone and not necessarily say, yeah, I've got this emotional connection, right? We're just nice, and nice opens doors. And so in that way you're connected at this, I said, fairly neutral level of being nice, but it goes such a long ways.
Well, it gets back to, Andy, that people buy from people, and we interact and prefer people that we enjoy being around, who are nice, who don't create friction in our lives. So there's definitely that.
Yeah, I think this whole topic for me gets back to this really need I think we have in this profession, sales, is to be a bit more nuanced in the way we think about things. You know, the sort of black and white, they don't want a relationship type. Yeah, it's just nothing's black and white, right? There's very little that's black and white in what we do. And so I think for people who really want to succeed over the long run, you have to give some thought about, okay, things like this, a relationship. What does a relationship mean? Because if you're misguided in what you think it is, right? If you think that the buyer has to like you, then you're going to invest a lot of time and energy in building a relationship that's not important to the buyer. You know, Gallup organization has surveyed salespeople over decades. One of the findings they had that was published, I think it was 6-7 years ago, I saw this, is that there's this huge mismatch between the buyer's perception of the value of the relationship and the seller's perception of the value of the relationship with the buyer. Meaning the sellers think it's more important than what the buyer does. They have this emotional connection.
God, isn't that interesting?
So it's like, where do we get that idea, right? Where do people that are being trained, new to sales, or people that have been in sales for a little while, where are they getting this notion? Are they confused when we say people buy from people they know, like, and trust? Are they being confused by what the word know and like mean?
Yeah, but I think it's harder. It's easier to train to a technique. Say these types of things. Ask these questions. Make sure you do this kind of qualification. I think there's some of those things that just, in some ways, are more technical in nature. But to tell someone be likable and to try to break that down for someone, some of the interpersonal stuff, I found that can be hard to teach.
So, in your mind, what's the key to that? I mean, how do we? Because this is really what we're talking about is an interpersonal connection that you're making with someone.
Well, I'll tell you that my first manager at Xerox told me that I was hired into a very technical division at Xerox, and he said his hiring philosophy was, if you've got a bright enough person, you can teach them just about anything. Technical, not technical, you can teach them. But it's very difficult to teach the interpersonal. That's just a harder one. And I don't disagree with that. I don't think it's impossible. But I do think some of the interpersonal I think that's more ingrained. And I think that is harder to teach. So I tend to hire to a persona or a person that sort of has more of that skill set naturally, and then you can work on it, and we can get better at just about anything. But I think somebody that has just maybe is a little bit further along the way I tend to hire to that, as opposed to trying to teach somebody just soup to nuts what it's like to be more personable and kind of some of those softer skills.
Well, and raise an interesting question. Have you ever interviewed anyone you thought, wow, this person's got a lot going on, but they're just kind of a jerk?
Of course. Yes. Do I hire those people? I don't.
Right.
And obviously people do, because they're out there and they often do very well.
And some are quite successful.
And quite successful. So it's just not, I don't, but that's me. I don't.
Does nice go further than, in your mind, does nice go further than being a smart jerk?
I think studies would support that nice goes further than being a smart jerk in most instances.
What? I think it does too. I mean, I asked the question because I thought that's what you would respond. But getting back to this idea of the connection, the relationship, and as you said, having these interpersonal skills to form this connection is, I think, one of the things that people don't think about and need to think a little bit more about with the importance of this is that it's what provides resilience during the buying process of the customer, during your sales process. Invariably, something's going to go wrong. Rarely do you have a buying process or a selling process that, for a prospect, that unfolds smoothly from point A to point B, right? From interest to decision. And where I think the real importance of this relationship comes in to bear is when things go bad, when things don't go according to plan. And that having that resilience in the connection is really quite important.
Yeah, I totally agree that you are going to need that. Yeah, you're definitely going to need that. You're going to need that resilience at some point and that connection. And you're right, things don't always go right. And they don't always go well. And so to have some of that currency already built up is very important.
So can you give an example of one case in your past where it's really been important?
God, I mean, one that goes to my mind, I don't know why, it was a long time ago. I was selling for Hewlett-Packard, or for this reseller for Hewlett-Packard, and it was not, Hewlett Packard was having all of these delays with some of their workstations, and this was a really critical components that one of these CIOs needed. And they were delayed and delayed and delayed. And I remember him just reaming me about, like, because it put him in a really compromised position. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that got us through it was that we had enough positive experiences to get over one that was really difficult. There's nothing I could do, and he knew it. And I was, I think the thing, Andy, I've had so many of them when things go wrong, and it's just to show up. It's just to show up and be there and be, again, this dependable, to be honest, to have integrity in it, transparent,
accountable.
And that those qualities are really important when things don't go well.
Yeah, I think it's a great lesson for people who are listening and thinking, okay, gosh, we run into difficult situations. I see it all the time. There's a tendency on part of salespeople to want to hide. Sometimes it's like, well, have you been in touch with the customer? Well, I figured since I didn't have anything new to tell them, right? This is like when something's not going according to plan. Since I don't have something new to tell them, no news is good news type thing. It's like, no. You have to stay in touch. You have to be completely transparent about what's going on. Over-communicate at that point, because they're wondering what's going on.
Absolutely. Over-communicate. But that's, again, when the relationship helps get you through those rough patches, that they're more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt and continue, as opposed to if they don't have that relationship with you, and that's when it can really fall apart.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right. Well, Bridget, this is the end. We've come to the end of this particular episode.
Until the next time.
When hopefully maybe you'll be in warmer climes.
I hope so.
You never know.
Even if I'm still here. Okay. I hope it's just warmer, even if it's here.
Well, what you need is Hawaii screensaver on your computer or something like that.
That sounds so great. Yes, I do.
You were there not that long ago.
I know. It seems like a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, until next time, as always, been a pleasure talking to you. Friends who are listening. Oh, yeah. Sorry to talk over you. Friends who are listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. If you haven't already, make sure you go to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to this podcast, Google Play, and subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. We really appreciate it. So until next time, this is Andy Paul.
And Bridget Gleason.
Talk to you then. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.